Welcome to Bristol Bay Native Corporation's podcast series, Mug Up with BBNC. Mug Up is a term commonly used in the Bristol Bay region, specifically in the fishing community. It refers to getting together with friends and family for a casual gathering over a warm cup of coffee or tea. It's all about sharing stories, experiences, and connecting with one another. In this podcast, hosted by BBNC's communications team, you'll hear from BBNC employees, community leaders, and passionate individuals who are engaged in BBNC's mission of enriching our Native way of life. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi everyone, welcome to our 9th episode of Mug Up with BBNC. Ooh. My name is Anise Oates and I am the communications specialist here at BBNC. I'm with Kayla Wilson and Carmel Ingebretson.
Hi everyone.
And today we have a very special episode for you. We're at the Bristol Bay Foundation's Indigenous Language Summit. And in this episode, we have the pleasure of talking to attendees and presenters about their experience and their takeaways from the summit. And so with us to kick it off, we have Kay Larson Blair, the Director of Cultural Heritage at Bristol Bay Foundation and the organizer of the Language Summit.
Hi, Kay.
Hey, Kay.
Good to have you.
Hello,
Kay,
Jamai.
do you want to introduce yourself?
Jamai, Winga Yuchtun, Ayanga Kasutan, Kay Larson Blair, Chogyong Akmingunga. My name is Kay and my Yupik name is Ayanga, and I'm from the community of Chogyong, also known as Dillingham. And my parents are Billy Larson and Jasper Blair of Dillingham. My maternal grandparents are Kay Larson and Shep Larson of Dillingham. And my paternal grandparents are Julie Blair of Iliamna and Jasper Blair of California/Sanak Island.
Awesome.
Wow, awesome.
What does your Yupik name mean?
So I got my Yupik name at Culture Camp a couple of years ago at the BBNC Culture Camp, and I had visited a lot with my grandfather prior to him passing away just recently, and he let me know that my great-grandma's Yupik name, they called her a Young. I'm not sure what that may have been shortened to, but I was gifted that name from Evelyn Yanez, and it means to kind of go wander, and
Wow.
I like to do that. I would always go wander off and pick rocks, go wander on the tundra, and I could do it for hours.
Oh my gosh.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that.
Okay, how long has the summit been taking place? And then what inspired BBF to start it?
So this is the second summit that took place. The first one was back in 2022 during COVID. And the first one, we had to limit the amount of attendees due to COVID restrictions. Mm-hmm. And so we had 50 people that were able to come together. And we brought in people from throughout the whole entire region. And we had a huge request from lots of people outside that didn't get to attend the summit. Mm-hmm. And so due to the reception, we had almost 100% attendance. There were a couple people that got weathered out. And the massive amount of requests we had for others to come in, we decided to host a second year.
Wow.
And so this is going to be a biannual event. We're planning another one in 2 years.
Okay,
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what inspired you guys to start something like this? Did you guys get interest from people that wanted an event like this?
So it's a little bit of a story, but when we started our strategic planning back in 2020, our cultural heritage program is relatively new. We started offering many grants back in 2016. And since this is a new area that we haven't really worked in, we wanted to hear from our communities and our region and our people to see what direction or leadership they'd like to see from the foundation in regards to cultural heritage. We did a gap analysis and interviewed all of our tribes. We had about 87% respondents. Wow. And then they suggested people for us to touch bases with. And so we had over 100 hours worth of interviews. And across all three of our cultural groups, Yupik, Alutiiq, Dani'ina, from our communities, those that lived in region and those that lived outside of region, everybody unanimously said that language was the largest concern that they had, both in terms of loss and then the availability to learn. And so that helped to guide our cultural heritage program with a focus on language revitalization efforts. And going through that, we were looking at ways that we can help support work and people coming together, and we noticed that there aren't many opportunities for people that work in language and culture to come together to really focus on those different areas. So we decided to host the first summit, and that's where we got funding from ATOM, the Association of Tribal Libraries, Museums, and Archives, to host the Language Summit.
That's so cool. I love how you guys are like, there's nothing like this. Let's just do it.
Yeah.
Let's just make one. That's cool.
It's definitely a new area, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. How many people are expected to attend this year's?
So we had 130 people register for the event, so
Cool.
Fingers crossed. Fortunately, it can be difficult to predict because there's not a lot of funding that comes into supporting an event like this. So a lot of people have to pay for their own travel out of pocket, which can be quite expensive when you look at coming in for an event like this from in region. But we're very hopeful, and we know that there's a lot of interest.
What's the demographic of those who come to the Language Summit? Are they teachers, or are they just community members?
So one of the questions we had asked in the registration was if this person is a teacher, a learner, a speaker, somebody that helps with educating, or other, and 60% of those had responded that they were language learners.
Oh, cool.
So a lot of the people that are coming are language learners. We also had a number of them that are first language speakers and teachers as well.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Kay. Thank you so much for being here and even putting on the summit. We're so grateful to be here, and we're so excited to see everything and learn and talk to attendees and presenters.
Koyana, thank you for having us.
Thank you, Kay.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So now we're going to transition into the Language Summit. So you're going to hear from attendees and presenters. And so I hope you enjoy.
Woo. Yay.
All right, we're here with Francisca Damaski. She is BBNC's Vice President of Shareholder and Corporate Relations. Welcome, Fran.
Yeah,
Welcome.
Fran.
Thanks for joining us on our break at the Language Summit. We wanted to talk to you because you opened the summit up today with a land acknowledgement, and we just wanted to hear, what's the background on that, and how did BBNC establish theirs?
So land acknowledgements are becoming more common across the region, across the state, and it's a respectful way of acknowledging and recognizing the people whose traditional homelands you're on, you're meeting, you're at a conference at, or even giving a presentation. 2 years ago, the late Marie Paul, she suggested that we start incorporating land acknowledgements during land committee board meetings, and we've done that. So each meeting is opened up with the land acknowledgement.
That's awesome. Can we hear your land acknowledgement?
The land acknowledgement I like to give is, I would like to begin with a land acknowledgement and recognize the Alutik Sukhbak, Dinaina Dinaina, Yupik Yupak, peoples of Bristol Bay, and thank them for their continued stewardship and caretaking of their lands.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Thank you, Fran.
Yeah, so when you're here in Anchorage, can we hear that land acknowledgement that you give?
Sure. I would like to begin our day with a land acknowledgement and recognize the Dinaina Athabascan people of the Klutna Native Village and Kanik Tribal Council, on whose traditional homelands we gather today. We recognize the thousands of years of stewardship as they continue to be caretakers of their lands.
Thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Guyana.
Thank you, Fran.
Thank you, Fran.
Our next guest speaker, we are so happy to have Sasa Peterson. Thanks for being here, Sasa. Can you introduce yourself?
Ang asqawga manukutami English ko nga angayo ka chinglak now nakluklu. I am Sasa Peterson, I am originally from Manakota. My parents were the late Anuska and John Nanaluk.
Well, we're happy to have you at this summit, and you're an attendee for the next couple days.
Yes.
Cool. You are the instructor of Alaska Native Studies, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And can you remind us which school you teach at?
I teach at Kenai Peninsula College under UAA, and this is, I lost count since 2016.
Awesome.
Closing in on maybe between 15 to 20 semesters.
Wow.
Wow, that's a lot. So what inspired you to participate in the summit?
I attended a couple years ago, and it was so inspiring. Speaking our language is beautiful. You know, when we speak English, we can get by, but there's so much more meaningful when we speak our native language, like one of the speakers was saying, you're involving your whole being, everything.
Yeah.
And it seems to be more meaningful.
Yeah.
What are some tips and tricks that teachers should know when teaching language and teaching Indigenous language?
Well, I used to work with elders, well, still do, and one of them who was about 95, he said,
Wow.
we are ever learning. So I learn along the way too. I know I make mistakes, like one of the speakers said this morning. If you made a mistake of how you did your approach, you just change it so it works better with your students. Be open-minded. You learn from your mistakes, and we just go with the flow. And I always tell my students, even if you just know how to greet, you are a speaker, because you need to have positive vibes that they are already speakers. So they see the end, not from the start.
Yeah.
What about those who are learning languages?
Practice, practice, practice.
That's good.
You don't have to be perfect. Like, I co-teach with another elder. She's really good with grammar, and we make a great team, and we support each other, and we let the students know, you know, you can do it, even for non-speakers. Like, we've had students from all over the world, French student, a lot of Asians, Central America. This past semester we had a student from New York and another one from California.
Wow.
And long as we can understand them, we keep cheering them on. We can understand you.
That's
yes,
great.
yes.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome.
What are some takeaways that you want to take away from this summit?
Just being here, you could just feel the positiveness, and, you know, like, we're doing a good job. We're not going to lose our language. You know, like, you see the young ones, they're just speaking English. We've been around for thousands of years, and we just got to do our part. Each of us has something to contribute. We're all gifted. We have talents, creativity. We just need to step in and do it, even if we mispronounce. Just keep going. I'm thinking of the non-speakers.
Yeah.
That's really good advice. Awesome. Well, thank you, Sasa. We
Yeah.
appreciate
Thank you so
taking your
much.
time and being here with us.
Okay.
Enjoy the rest of the summit.
Oh, Yana, it's been so wonderful.
Our next guest was a panelist, and it's Michelle Ravenmoon. Welcome. She was a panelist on the Cultivating Educators in Bristol Bay and Beyond. Michelle, can you introduce yourself?
Shishida, Dakhti Dalkesan Shiji, Michelle Ravenmoon Shiji, Gaha Ishlan Shida, Dina Ina Ishlan Shida, Popvanoi Shugush Kaya Kailanda Idishunta Kotang Katna Keluda, Zildat Nu Shanashu, Johide Shkun, Shkaina, Tishana, Trisha, Tiana. Greetings, everybody. I'm Michelle Ravenmoon. That's my English name. And my Dina'ina name is Strong Woman. My Chuttabuch named me that. And I grew up on Lake Iliamna in a little place called Popfanoy. And currently, my husband and I are raising our children in Soldotna during the winter for school. And then we return back to Lake Iliamna in the summertime.
Awesome.
You're also on the board of directors for BBNC.
That's true, I am.
One of the questions they asked you in the panel was kind of how you got involved in being a teacher, and you kind of said it was by accident. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I started learning my language because it was something that I felt very passionate about, because when I heard the first of my language and I started speaking it, it felt like I was coming home. Like I was returning to something that I always knew, but I didn't know. Mm-hmm. I didn't know in my current life, but it felt so familiar and right. And I always felt like English was a difficult language for me, and that I just, I stumbled through it. But when I spoke my language, I felt completely right and completely whole. And so that's how the journey started with learning. I didn't start learning until I was actually an adult. And I was lucky that one of my relatives, my grandmother, Cheetah Pauline, was my teacher in the beginning. So that's how I started learning. And then just because there was hardly anyone that spoke Dina'ina, I was just asked in several different instances to teach it. And along with it, culture and singing and dancing. So I don't feel like that was my goal originally, but it's just how I came upon becoming a Dina'ina teacher.
That's awesome. And you kind of shared a little bit about it, but what sparked your passion to learn the Dina'ina language?
It was definitely that feeling of rightness, just understanding more of who I am and where I come from. Also, part of that language journey is learning the different parts of the seasons and how we are, how we be on this earth, how we live on this earth, and how we interact with the land. And there's different times of the year when we do different things, like this is Tlítlantach, this is the springtime. And a lot of people are out hunting for birds, for food. What I remember in my childhood is going out camping. This is a time when we light campfires, have picnics, we go out and get wood, and we're out in that daylight. We're celebrating all the daylight. And it's those activities that are the seasonal rounds that really brought life to my world, and all the language, the umbrella is every part of that, of our seasonal round.
Yeah. In the panel, one of the questions that was asked was, what was one piece of advice that an elder gave you when you first started your language journey? Do you want to share with our audience your answer?
Well, there was a lot of advice, a lot of different advice that was given to us, and I shared what Chuttabuch has always said to me, and the last thing he said to me was to keep it up, to keep it going. And he meant our cultural work and our language work, and he said, even if it's just a little bit, if you just do a little bit, it's okay. And it is a really big undertaking to learn our languages. It's a healing journey. There's times when we all struggle. There's days when I've struggled so much, but I just remember his advice, and I'll always remember it, is to keep it going. Yeah. And the other advice that Cheetah Pauline, his wife, would say to us, or she has recently said a lot to us, is "Naga kunich delzecha." Yes, don't forget our language, and that's something that every day I think about too.
Yeah.
Do you have any other advice for somebody that might just be starting their language journey and they're struggling, and what advice do you have for somebody that's trying to learn?
So one of the things that I was really surprised about in my language learning from the elders, and it was about teaching our youth and our future generations to love. And our elders would always say, "Nachaschin," I love you. And it was kind of uncomfortable for me at first. I kind of was like, kind of squirmed around a little bit. But it was like, I saw how much it really, really affected the kids that we were working with, the youth and everything. So the elders really taught us that teaching from a place of being authentic and real, but also being very loving and kind toward each other. And that's a really big lesson in how we actually survived for thousands and thousands of years, is taking care of each other and loving each other. So I just wanted to stress that part, because that was a big lesson for me, and it helped me, get past my own angers and things that I had against the injustice that I felt like happened to us in our past. And it just made me really think about what really works and what's really healing, and what is with us at the end of the day is Nachashin.
Well, thank you, Michelle. That was really touching and so important for our listeners to hear. So I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, our next guest is Mark Harachka. And Mark, you gave the words of wisdom today at the Language Summit. Welcome to our podcast. Welcome to Mug Up. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, I'm Mark Harachka. I was born in Ecock and then raised in Clarks Point and then later in Dillingham.
So when you shared this morning, you shared a super beautiful story about your grandma, and you mentioned the night that you were proud to be Alaska Native. Can you share that story with our audience?
Okay, well, the story occurred in November of 1971. That was the first year that I began my first teaching career in Bethel, and my grandmother, Masa, was born and raised in Quiggle, down the river from Bethel. But she lived in Bethel for years before she came to Bristol Bay. And she was she was a native dancer as a young child. Her with her four sisters. Her dad always made them dance for the potlatches that occurred in Quiggle. And so, but I grew up with it at home. The native language, the native culture was not practiced because we only celebrated those that were American related. So it was not a good feeling to identify yourselves with a native group, and our parents and grandparents recognized that by the way they were treated. So I grew up knowing that I want to excel as an English teacher and live successfully as major culture did. So my first winter in Bethel, we invited my grandmother to come visit us, and she stayed for about several weeks, and this occurred in November of 1971. It was towards evening on a snowy, blustery, and dark day, and we were just sitting around in home after dinner, and my wife was reading in another room, and I was just watching my grandmother weave a basket. And no words spoken. I just watched her, and she was very busy what she was doing, knowing I was watching her. So about a few minutes into it, I asked her, just for the sake of something to say, Grandma, what was it like growing up in Quiggle, where you grew up? She never said anything. She just kept her sewing. And then all of a sudden she put her sewing down. And then she started looking up a little bit and closed her eyes. And then she started chanting an old Yupik song. I don't know the words, but it went something like, normally you're dancing, ah, yeah, ah, yeah. I knew it was his native dancing song. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden she started moving with her hands and using the hand motions to go with her song, sitting in place. And I was mesmerized. I wished I had a recorder. But I was just so dumbfounded because she never did this for us before. She was going into the song. She became very animated, like she was dancing in front of the crowd, and she went, dancing really fast, and as they do when they get into the song. And I couldn't say a word. I just watched as she came towards the end of the song, where she softened her voices and slowed down her dancing. When it was done, she just took her hands and laid it down on her, put it down on her sewing, and looked down. And I was looking at her, and two big single tears rolled down her cheeks. And I made up my mind at that point that if my grandma's culture and her language and her nativeness is so important to her, and we waited this long to bring that out of her, what right do I have to discredit that heritage? And I made up my mind on that November 1971 night that I would honor my grandmother's heritage, which was mine. And that was one of the times I always say, "Atlangakta," like she said, "You come too." And from that moment on, I made a difference in how I viewed my nativeness and my heritage.
Wow.
And something else you said today kind of made me tear up when you said if your grandparents could see you guys up here dancing, how proud they would be.
Yes, when I think about it, I was looking out towards and your grandma and your grandparents, you know, and I saw several grandparents, I mean, adults sitting out there that I knew their parents and their grandparents, and I still remember them when my parents would interact with them or my grandma interact with them. They would speak Yupik. And I'd be dumbfounded, those shades know how to speak Yupik like that. And they would talk fluently. Nanny and mom and dad, they would talk, when they were amongst themselves, they would talk fluently. So that's they would be so proud. I think if they were alive today and could see that engagement happening, because they weren't allowed to do that when they were growing up. But when they were together, they enjoyed the company of just telling stories in their native language.
Yeah. So special. So, do you have any advice for younger shareholders and descendants that might be shy or embarrassed to practice their heritage? What advice do you have to give?
Well, I think the advice I'm going to give is really, really supported by you folks and the program you're involved with. It's just bringing the culture to them, or bringing their language and experience, and you're opening a dialogue between them, and demonstrating the art of native dancing and native singing and native crafts and native subsistence activities through your culture camps and the things I've seen today, this in the last couple of days, are kinds of things that I'd say to young people that I think that we've done so much already since 1971 to encourage that. And I think now is the time for programs like yours is engaging them to come dance with me, come eat with me, come make with me. Let's celebrate together. And I would tell the young people, just like I tell my grandkids, embrace it, do it. You can't go wrong. And I always joke to them about my grandma's story. When they act silly or goofy, I always say, "No, quit acting smarty." You don't have to be smarty anymore. You just do it, and you'll make yourselves happy.
And they'll all hopefully find that same moment you did back in 1971.
Yeah, because from that moment on, it changed the course of my life forever.
Wow.
I related. I didn't shy away from it anymore. And my grandmother, it was 1971. My grandmother died in December of 1979.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm glad that she was able to see me at least show an interest in that.
Yeah.
So.
Anything else you want to share with our listeners?
Well, I think your listening audience is where we weren't ready to be in the 50s. And now you have every facet of their community life is engaged in their language. I mean, you go to church and you listen to Yupik hymnals, hymns being sung, and Yupik sermons being preached. You go into Bristol Bay corporations meetings that are like you did today. And you hear them, and you start out with a prayer. You start out with a traditional dance or something, and you're promoting it. We are in such a good place right now, because I think It just ties us all together. We don't have to hide and keep our heritage to ourselves. Now we can celebrate it.
Yeah.
Just celebrate it.
Mm-hmm. Makes me hopeful for our future.
Absolutely.
And our-
Yes, we're in a good place.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for chatting with us today. I know our
Well, thank you
listeners
for
are
asking.
gonna love to hear you. So we
Yes.
appreciate your time, and thanks for being here at the summit.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Mark. Our next guest is April Counselor. She is the keynote speaker on the second day. Hi, April. Thanks
Hi.
for coming.
Thank you.
Do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. My full name is Ishik April Gale Lactonin Counselor. Ishik is my Alutiiq name. It means owl. And my name was given to me by my language teachers, Nick Alokli and Florence Pesterkoff.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about where you work?
Sure. I am the executive director of the Alutiiq Museum in Kodiak. I'm originally from the village of Larsen Bay, but I've lived in Kodiak for most of my life at this point.
Awesome.
So, how did you get involved in language revitalization?
Well, when I was an intern at the Alutiiq Museum during college, I was speaking with Dr. Sven Hawkinson Jr. He was the executive director of the museum at the time, and he encouraged me to start learning my language. And it wasn't something that I would have ever thought that I would do, but I thought, well, somebody suggested it, and that's kind of common in our community that if someone says you should do something, and maybe that's what you were called to do, actually. So I started just very, very basic learning when I was still an undergrad, and then when I graduated and came back to Alaska, I started working at the Alutiiq Museum, and that was when I first started more actively learning, because when I had been in college, I only had recordings and the dictionary.
Something you said in your presentation that really stuck with me was leaders are not made, they're chosen. And it sounds like that's very true for you.
Yeah, they say that in Kodiak, leaders are not made, they're chosen. Sometimes you just get picked, and then you kind of have to rise to the occasion.
Yeah, that's awesome. What does it mean when we talk about language revitalization?
Well, from a strict definition, language revitalization is the intentional bringing back of a language into everyday speech, into the community, into families. But when you really study language revitalization, you begin to understand that language revitalization itself is not really just about the language. It's about the cultural connections that the language enables. It's about the social safety net that connects our community. It's the ways that we traditionally communicated with each other in our leadership. And so when you lose your language, you lose all those other things that are connected to the language. When you bring the language back, you can also help revitalize those other systems within your culture, and everything can be strengthened.
So what are some practical ways someone can start their language journey?
I think it's important to have a plan, whether you're at the community level or at the individual level. Some individuals, they want to learn just some language for their own identity, and that's fine. There are other learners that want to take it all the way and get credentialed and become a language teacher, and for either of those ways, you kind of have to have a plan of where you're going, where you want to go. And so we need people from that entire spectrum to be involved in the language revitalization, because even if you don't know the whole language and you maybe just know how to introduce yourself, you understand the importance of the language so that when you are in a decision-making capacity in the future, you can help the language movement that way.
And as far as like language revitalization, what are some strategies that teachers can use in communities?
Well, one of the strategies that I think is important is to start with understanding what your language status is. How many speakers do you have? What are their ages? If you're running a multi-community program, which communities have the most speakers? What parts of the community are the language still being used? And based upon that, it helps you decide what is the best plan for revitalizing your language. Because if all of your speakers are in their 70s and higher, you're not going to ask those speakers to become immersion preschool teachers. They've already put in their time, right? They've already raised a lot of kids and grandkids. So in a situation like that, where most of your speakers are more elderly, then having a master apprentice project might be most appropriate. If you have speakers that are in their 40s and 30s, then they might be able to become direct teachers themselves. And so there are different kind of guidances out there for different levels of language threat, and then how to actually respond to them.
Cool. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
There's so much I could share.
Yep.
Well, I think, taking care of each other, paying attention to learner burnout, and also paying attention to if the elders are getting something out of this too. I think sometimes we forget about making sure that the elders are feeling happy and fulfilled in their language work, just as we are with the learners feeling happy and fulfilled. And we have to protect everyone that's involved so that we can all be both successful and also enjoy the process, because the reason we're all doing this is we all love that feeling of being able to connect with each other through our language and through our culture. And so we don't want to make it into something that's filled with, stress and
dread,
and misery.
Yeah.
We want people to think about the language in terms of joyfulness and connection.
Thank
Great
you.
note. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, April. And thanks for being the keynote speaker at the summit today.
Yeah.
I think people got a lot out of it.
Thank you for the invitation.
Our next guest speaker here at the summit is Ethan Atwater. Hi, Ethan.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Good to have you. Let's have you introduce yourself because you're a summit attendee, right, for the next couple days?
Yes.
Awesome.
So, Yachalidu is Ethan Jacko Atwater, Denana Eshlan Shida, Kali Eshlan Shida, PJB Shugu, Shakaya Kailan, Kudigu, Dechezetnu, Yeshdu, Du. Hi, my name is Ethan Jacko Atwater. I am Denina. I'm of the Cully clan. I'm from the village of Bay, but right now I live here in Anchorage.
That is so cool. What motivated you to attend the summit?
Well, I've been a learner for just a little bit now. I still consider myself a very beginner learner. And so honestly, I think anyone who knows anything about learning a language, you're not, especially something like this, an Alaskan Native language, you're not just learning a language, you're learning culture, you're learning about people, you're learning about connections. And so it's not as simple as like academically learning. And so learning about this and seeing this, I wanted to be here just to make those connections and to see people talk and how learning language is affecting them and things about leadership and how we can pass those languages on, because I'm still, like I said, I'm still in my beginning stages of learning, but just seeing like what the path looks like, not just for me, but for everyone else as well, to maybe replicate later on in the future.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Some of our audience may not know this, but you and your mom, Barbara, you write Dina'ina books.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about that?
So what we do is we've taken stories that were passed down to us from my great-great-uncle Walter, who was a Dena'ina elder. Oh. He told us many stories about his life, his history, but also fables and legends. And we are taking those fables and legends and turning them into picture books to share with everybody, not just Dena'ina, not just Alaska Natives, but with everybody. So we've been working on a process with that. We have 2 out right now. The first one is called How Raven Got His Crooked Nose, and the second one is called Chia and the Foxman.
Awesome. Are there any other books in the works?
Yes, we're working on them. Hopefully they'll be out soon.
That is so awesome.
That's really cool. I think about, you're like, I'm a learner, I'm a beginner, but even just through writing books and telling those stories, you're teaching in a way, and that's so cool. And I think a lot of what was touched on today is not only are we learners, but we're going to be teachers, and the more we absorb, we then teach, and that's how a lot of elders, I don't want to say become elders, but as elders grow and they get older, they're just absorbing information, and then they get to a point where they start sharing it. And so it's cool. It's so cool that you're a teacher without even knowing it.
It's interesting, like all the things that you really think about, like in the stages of starting to write a book. It's like those just kind of like we enter into it in this very beginning stage of like, all right, we're putting words on the page here. And then you really, the more you do that, the more you really have to interrogate what do those words mean, both in English and in Dena'ina, because we do use Dena'ina words there. And like I said, now that I'm learning more, it's like the more I learn, the more I'm like really starting to interrogate the words that I use, not just in that I'm writing, but in how I talk about these things, because the language, as you learn it, it forces you to reevaluate your relationship with not just what you're talking about, but everything else around it, and then how do you communicate that to other people? And these are children's books, so I don't have that many words to use with them, but still, it's like being very conscious of those decisions there. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, totally. So if our audience is wondering how did the raven get his crooked nose, they can go on Amazon.
Amazon, or if you're here in Alaska, it should be available at your local bookstore.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's
cool.
so cool. Awesome. Well, thank you, Ethan, for
Janan.
sharing.
Janan
and taking
Khali.
the
Thank
time.
Okay, well, our next guest is Laura Zimmon. Laura was on the Cultivating Educators in Bristol Bay and Beyond panel. Hi, Laura. Do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself?
Sure. Hui Laura Zimmon, Bristol Bay Ami Dachtwa, Naknik Mi Suslianga, Alutik Sluchbeak, Annika Darlene Land, Naknik Mi Suslia, Arika Peter Lynn, Chignik Mi Suslia, Wicca Carl Zimmon, Quinu Young Mi Suslia. My name is Laura Zimmon. I am from Bristol Bay. I currently live in Naknek. My parents are Peter and Darlene Lind, and my husband is Carl Zimmon. I work for the University of Alaska Fairbanks in Bristol Bay campus as an assistant professor, and I'm happy to be here today.
Awesome. We're so
Awesome.
happy to have you.
Laura, I didn't realize you were at Lind.
Yes. my
That's
dad-
awesome.
Yeah, my dad's
All right.
Peter Lind.
Cool.
I love when we can make those connections. I feel like every day at work, I'm like, oh, you guys are related. We're related. Everyone's
Yeah.
related. That's awesome. So you're a teacher. So in regards to culture and language, what sparked your interest in working at the university?
It was kind of a natural progression working at the university. My parents are Alaska Native artists, and my dad did the teaching in schools. And so I really enjoyed seeing him do that and hearing from other people. I remember talking to a principal, and he was saying how when my dad was teaching in their community at the school, how the students just enjoyed it so much that they were there before school, they were there after school, and they just, they were there every day. So seeing him do that, I think, was a big part of my wanting to become involved with our language, our culture, our tribal governance, those types of things in our communities.
What is one key takeaway you want attendees and our audience to know?
I think a key takeaway from this language conference is that we're making forward progression. And I think we're doing this in a great manner. I've attended these conferences, and we've kind of gone from, okay, what's the historical trauma? Kind of ground level, what's happened? And now we're at that stage of how do we move forward? And we're actually starting to do that by working with people who are fluent in the language, people who know not just the mechanics of cultural arts, but the history behind it, the beliefs, the values. Why do we do things this way? And I think that's really important that we're finding those people and then empowering them to be the teachers, because they naturally are. They are the teachers. They have that knowledge.
Yeah.
Are there any key takeaways that you'll be bringing back to the university with you after this summit?
Yeah, I think that I actually started making a list. So I think key takeaways is more pathways, stepping stones into credentials, certifications, so that we have a lot of non-traditional students in our communities. I was very much a non-traditional student. I went from a certificate program through my master's degree program, working, raising a family, and just taking classes here and there as I could. If it was one class a semester, 2 classes a semester, whatever I could do. So we have to have those support structures in place for our non-traditional students, and then build pathways that are stepping stones into the higher degrees. So maybe it's a credential where you have, 6, 9 credits and you get a credential, and then that leads on to an occupational endorsement, but more of them geared towards our language and our cultural arts. And
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think that's really important that we carry that forward.
Yeah. And when you say non-traditional students, you mean like those who didn't, graduate high school and then go to college, and after college then have a job, and just more of they're doing it in just a different way than what is normal to society, or society would say is. Yeah.
So it's the non-traditional students that a lot of them are staying in our communities, and they are continuing to learn our language. They're continuing to learn the culture, the subsistence, the carving, the skin sewing, the beading, all of those types of things. And they're also working in our tribal governments and carrying policies forward, sovereignty issues, those types of things, advocating for the people in their region. So I think it's really important that we find these pathways to help support them as well.
Because what they're doing is so important.
Very important.
And making such a big impact on our kids and our future grandkids.
And the beliefs and values.
Yes.
They're learning those beliefs and values. They're going out and doing subsistence. They're sharing with the elders. They're sharing with those people in their communities that need it. And those are just skills that we have to keep carrying forward as well, besides our language, because we will lose them if we don't.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so important.
Is there anything else you want to share before we hop off?
I think that just finding a spot to start. And I did that at the last conference. I was thinking, I need to learn my language. And that was last year, about this time. And this fall and this spring, partly because my son wanted to take Alutiiq language, we decided to take it together.
Aww.
So we took Alutiiq language 1 and Alutiiq language 2, and just getting that start and going forward and say, I'm going to try it, I'm going to do it. And I took those classes, and it's like, okay, I can start seeing how we put the words together, and why I always heard something pronounced this way. I always say I know all the food words. I learned those growing up, but when I took the class, I started recognizing some of the words that were being taught in the class, and it's like, I know that word. Why do in that song? My dad, when I heard a song in the class, very first part of Alutiiq 1, I asked my mom. I says, "Mom, why do I know this song?" Because over the years, I would hum the first part of it, and she said my dad used to sing it to me as a lullaby when I was small. That was an Alutiiq song. So that connection, it was like, even we don't think the kids are learning things, they are. So just to keep doing it.
That's so cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Well, thank you, Laura.
Yes,
Thanks for
thank you,
taking your
Laura.
time.
Thank you.
Well, that was our last guest. How are you guys feeling?
So good. It was such a wonderful event.
Yeah, agreed. And huge shout out to all our guests and speakers and presenters that came.
Yeah.
Those were really, really cool stories.
And the Bristol Bay Foundation for organizing that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Definitely.
We're so thankful for them. So we had a lot of great attendees, presenters today. And I just wanted to recap with you guys on your takeaways, what you thought.
I would say my biggest takeaway was that you don't have to be perfect when you're learning. That it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to get frustrated, and it's okay to take a break, because it's not easy learning a new language. And I just was really inspired by that, because I know it can be super frustrating trying to speak a new language and just not getting it. But everyone was super encouraging, and I just encourage everyone to keep that in mind as they're learning.
Speaking of that, I feel like kind of going with that, my favorite part was the dancing at the beginning. There was this icebreaker at the beginning that we did, and they told us that we were going to do a dance, We
Like a
kind of
six-move dance?
Yeah, so we kind of found one person in the audience, and those two people, so there were groups of two, and we would each create like a 6-move dance, some kind of like native dance. And then once you did that, your group of two would find another group of two, you would show each other your dances, and then there's groups of 4, and then your group of 4 would find another group of 4. Anyway, I thought that was super cool. There ended up being like big groups of 8, and you would come up with your favorite, dance, and then you would show everybody in the audience your dance. I thought, number one, that was a really cool icebreaker because you're kind of finding people that you maybe wouldn't normally say hi to or talk to or don't know. And then I thought it was cool that each move in like a native dance means something. So there were some dances that talked about like going moose hunting and being like thankful and blessed that you were able to get this moose. There was another dance that talked about being grateful that we were able to gather and talk about language. And then we did one, Carmel and I, about egg hunting.
Yeah.
Cool. And like, I don't know if we were talking about seagulls or what kind of birds, but they were like trying to get us, and we were like dodging them. Yeah. And then afterwards, I remember a niece saying, "Oh my gosh, I think that's the first time I've ever native danced." And I was like, "Yeah, I can count on my hand the amount of times I've native danced." So, and I think that kind of goes along with, I feel like I don't have the rhythm to native dance. I feel like I'm very tall and lanky and awkward, but it goes back to what you were saying, Carmel, you don't have to be perfect. Yeah. Like you just get up there and you dance and you just do it, which I think is cool. And then I think lastly, I'll just say, being a new mom, I think these kind of summits are so cool. And not just like these 2-day summits, but we should be doing these kind of things like all year long and trying to instill culture in our future generations like every day.
Yeah.
I really want my daughter to know our culture and who we are, and I want her to native dance and to know our language. So it was just really meaningful to me in that way.
I also love, like, during the dancing, like, humor is such a big part of our cultures. And I love that a lot of the dances that the groups did incorporated humor in some way.
That's true. Yeah, a lot of dancing, a lot of laughing, a lot of applause.
Yeah.
It was cool.
It was awesome. I too loved the native dancing. It was just great, and it helped me feel more connected for sure. I loved that. For me, I'm coming from a perspective of like never speaking. In my household, like no one really spoke at all. A lot of the takeaways that I had were just to be proactive in, teaching and learning, and in the learning aspect, listening and soaking up as much information as possible. And a few people said this, but, we are future elders. Whether you're 25 like I am or you're 45, eventually you'll be an elder. And to just have that perspective when you're learning, and that way, you have that information and that knowledge to pass on to future generations, your children, your grandchildren. And so just being able to look at language and culture in that lens was really meaningful for me. And then as well as a few presenters mentioned how in a lot of the native languages, it's a lot more complex than English, and that's not to say English isn't a hard language to learn. It's more about where the words come from. So an example that one of the presenters had was egg. Egg is a word for baby chicken or duck that's waiting to hatch, right? That's right before it's born. In his native language, I can't remember exactly what he spoke or what the word was, but he was saying how it's from the mother, and so it attaches that thing, that object, to the mother. And so it can be a lot more complex, and especially going from English to learning a native language, it can be harder because there's a lot more deeper meaning to things, not just memorization. That was definitely some practical wisdom that I gained from that.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was a great 2 days, and I didn't attend the summit last year, but definitely want to moving forward, and encourage anybody that's wanting to build that connection to their culture and language a little more. Like, this was such an amazing experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone who was on our podcast. Thank you to the attendees, to the presenters. We could not have had this podcast without them, and I just want to thank them for sharing their knowledge and sharing what they learned. We really appreciate it, and we all just want to give a big shout out to the Bristol Bay Foundation for allowing us to be there. And I just also want to say thank you to Kay, and thank you to everyone who put on the Language Summit. So excited to attend next year.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Koyana.
We'll see you next episode.
Bye.
We are the legacy of our elders, each of us unique, with gifts to give and histories to make. Our resilience will carry our voices forward to build the future our elders imagined. We are the next generation of Bristol Bay Native Corporation shareholders, and we share so much more than a corporation.